Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our first Rebuilding City Tourism webinar. My name is Jerry Lennon. I'm Chief Executive of Visit Belfast. And you'll remember that in February we launched our 3-year business plan, Rebuilding Belfast City Tourism. The plan set out a new direction of travel for us as a DMO and identified 2 or 3 key themes that we needed to focus on if Belfast was to regain tourism to the level it was in 2019 and to remain competitive in the new world, whatever that is, post-COVID. Some of these themes included sustainability and embedding sustainability in everything that we do. Secondly, focusing on driving demand to protect and sustain our local businesses. Third, collaboration and partnership. And importantly, fourth, focusing on local tourism neighbourhood initiatives. And that's what we want to focus on today. And that's why we've entitled today's webinar, Love Local. It's especially good to see so many people, over 120 people have joined us this afternoon, given the week that's in it, when we are busy opening our businesses and hopefully taking the first tentative steps to a good summer season. We are delighted that you've taken the time to join us this afternoon. Now, this pandemic has rocked us to the core, both individually, in our businesses, as our city. What it has done is it has made us pause and think and rethink, how do we reimagine our city? It's made us push the reset button for tourism, if you like. And one of the things that we've learnt is this: tourism can no longer be simply seen as a driver of economic development. It must be a tool for community and societal well-being and as a protector for the environment. The pandemic has also had lasting changes on the impact of travellers' behaviours. Tourists of today are far more socially and environmentally aware, clearly far more healthy conscious, and also they want more meaningful, indigenous, authentic experiences, and they want to know how their visit is impacting positively on the destinations that they are in. To discuss this and more, I'm delighted to be joined by a truly international panel of destination experts. Renowned travel consultant and writer and long-term supporter of Belfast, Professor Terry Stevens, will lead the conversation from Swansea. Pia Lang Christensen, Chief Executive of Visit Aarhaus in Denmark, and Petra Šušek, Managing Director of Ljubljana Tourism in Slovenia. I'm looking forward to hear how they've used tourism to rebuild their local economies and then to use local neighbourhood tourism to add value and stay competitive in the very competitive tourism market field. The importance of tourism to our city cannot be understated. Not only did it create and sustain 21,000 jobs, generating £500 million annually in our local economy, but it simply transformed how our city was perceived, both by people in the city and the pride that it generated, but by visitors and how the brand and the image of Belfast became known throughout the world. Through the last 20 years, we've had ups and downs, but common through all of that has been the innovation, the creativity, and the resilience of our tourism industry. And those are the attributes that we will fall back on as we rebuild tourism post-COVID-19. Loving local, the title of the day, is not just a slogan, it's a mindset, it's a concept. The concept that enables us to position Belfast and differentiate our city as authentic and real. It's about the businesses, the communities and the people that provide those products and services that give our city its character and provide original, unique experiences. Now, we're part of a global tourism community, and that community, as exemplified by our participants today, allows us to learn from each other's experiences. And I'm delighted that we will hear from Pia and Petra, and I know the Examples I will do will share with us will be different, but there will be common themes that will have resonance with us, such as cultural quarters, people, neighbourhoods and food. And so, if I may, I'm going to hand over to Professor Terry Stevens to start the conversation. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Jerry. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, I'm a frequent visitor to Belfast, love the city. First visited Belfast in the same year as I visited Ljubljana for the first time, which was 1971. So I'm delighted to welcome Pia and Petra, two people who I hugely admire from the work they do, and two cities which, along with Belfast, constitute, in my book anyhow, three of the finest cities you'll find anywhere in the world, and certainly my three favorite cities in Europe. What I'd like to do in a few minutes is just to give an overview of the way in which I see things, and then I'm going to introduce or invite Pia to say a few words about Aarhus, and then on to Petra. So just, taking stock, I love the words of, Van Morrison from your city. And in Eamon Hughes's book on the selected lyrics of Van Morrison, Eamon Hughes says, Morrison is talking for us all, poised throughout our lives between what we've already experienced and what might lie ahead. I mean, we're genuinely all dwellers on the threshold, and we're stepping into areas of uncertainty, areas of activity where things have changed, and things have probably changed for the better, despite some of the atrocities we see around the world, but we're certainly seeing change. And I think one of the things that COVID has done is to expose the emptiness of destination and city slogans, and it's exposed the silliness of destination branding, whilst at the same time amplifying the importance of the way cities behave and the way in which you look after your reputation. We're going to be judged on how we behave in the future. And in the last 12 months, we've spent an awful lot of time fretting about the new normal, when perhaps we should have been thinking and talking about the new extraordinary. The pandemic has precipitated scientific advancement, it's championed innovation, and it's ushered in a whole new age of collaboration, challenge, and accelerated change. And I think that's the optimism and the route forward for us thinking about the future of urban tourism. So here's just a few reflections specifically on urban tourism. I'll run through them quite quickly, but I think it's about bounce forward. It's not a bounce back. The clocks aren't going to go back. I think we've got to inject a whole new way of thinking. Yes, we've got to address the immediate, which is, Jerry, what's happening to many of your members today. They're at the opening stage, so we have to address the immediate, but let's not lose sight of the strategic. Cities will always have a pulling power, and I don't think COVID has impacted on city status. I think cities are always there to be great, and I think it's about finding, in Ljubljana's case, capital cityness, whatever that might be, and for Aarhus and probably Belfast, second cityness. What is it? I think COVID is driving the livable city idea, and both Ljubljana and Aarhus have wonderful quality of life indices. It's certainly pushing the better places to live, better places to visit mantra. Cities need to be better managed with greater integration between the different aspects of urbanization, from road planning to sewage planning to tourism planning. They need to be better noted, and a stronger reputation of the way cities invest in talent. Neighborhoods and the local are going to be key. I think we're going to take notice of the good cities, the cities that do things well and right. And of course, the domestic market is going to be a very strong driver of our future in the longer term. I don't think domestic tourism should be written off as purely an immediate gesture. I see 10 paradigm shifts happening. And I think they're asking you, all of you in the tourism industry, and, Jerry as chief executive, Petra as managing director, Pia as Aarhus, you have to be the new alchemists. You're working with many unknown components, and these paradigm shifts are real. Hybridity is everywhere, uniqueness, novel solutions, blurring of edges. How difficult it is these days to actually say, well, that's a hotel. Well, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's something else. I think we need to look at outliers, things that are left of field who are rapidly becoming mainstream. Co-creation and codependency, this idea of collaboration is going to be dominant. Transformation, to be bold and go where no one's been before. Respecting elasticity, there's much more fluidity in the way people are consuming places and spaces. That means DMOs have to be much more agile, flexible, and fluid themselves. I see a lot of repurposing happening, new uses for the old. I see talent being the alternative to skills. So you might have a really good hotel cleaner, but they're the best violinist in the city. So their value as a violinist is greater than their value as a cleaner. So look at talent. And I think we have to recalibrate how we perceive value. So there are all these different dimensions of tourism that we need to look at. And I think we need to give greater consideration for the 24/7 city. That time which James Joyce said, the hour when soft lights come and go. How do we deal with the 24/7 city? And fundamental is, how do you want success in Belfast, Aarhus, Ljubljana to look like in 2030? And what does that mean for the things you have to do now to achieve how you measure success in the future? And that probably means thinking of the things you haven't thought of before. And that's my lasting thought for you is, why not think of the things you haven't thought of before? And I know that Pia and Petra are going to touch on those types of ways of thinking. And in all of this, I returned to music. I began with music with Van Morrison. I returned to these lyrics. Will time make man more wise, now the trees are almost green? When time and tides have been, will you be bolder than today? Because we all have to be a little bit bolder in what we do. So, a few thoughts to whet the appetite. And I'm going to go immediately to introduce Pia. Visit Aarhus promotes Denmark's largest city, but she has overseen the amalgamation of Visit Aarhus with a much wider range of destinations that embrace the rural and the coastal in the environs around Aarhus. It's a city to love for many reasons, for its innovation, for its extraordinary architecture, but I love it, Pia, because I can walk it. Your river that runs through the center of your town touches the harbor. You've been playful with architecture. Your new library is one of the best visitor attractions in the world. It's just a delightful, compact, well-managed city. So please tell us more about Aarhus and the wider destination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry, for this very nice introduction. And I must say, I'm very glad and also honored to be here. And I hope that what I'm going to say can be maybe of some inspiration or food for thought, and maybe you can recognize some of the issues in Belfast. I must admit, I've only been to Belfast for one day, and that was way too little, and I have to come back. But that was what it was. My name is Pia, as Terry said, and I'm the CEO of Visit Aarhus, which is the second city of Denmark, but also a destination that's been growing rapidly during the last year and a half. And what I'm going to do is just first talk a little bit about what is our destination like, what's the DNA here, what's the numbers, and then I'm going to show you just a short film of 1 minute and 30 seconds, just to give you an impression of the Aarhus region. and after that, talk a little bit about our new strategy. And now we've already begun to talk about paradigm shifts and the new normal and all these things. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that. What does that mean to us in Aarhus? But I think let's just start with the first slide and let's move on from there. And I think you're doing the slide presentation or controlling that for me. I think it's on now. Okay, this is our region. That's Denmark you see on the left, and the Aarhus region you see on the right. And the Aarhus region covers today 8 municipalities. It was established the 1st of January 2020, so it's a relatively new region. I've been in the job for 2 years, and in that time we've doubled in our geography and our turnover and everything. So it's been quite a busy period on top of COVID-19. We have 824,000 inhabitants in the Aarhus region. And of course, it covers 3 different areas. There's a city tourism, the business tourism, and also the coast and nature tourism, which are equally big in our destination. If we talk about what the value created, then 15,400 jobs it creates, a little bit less than Belfast, I understand. But I think in many ways, the 2 destinations are comparable and similar. We are, as I said, the 2nd city of Denmark, but we're also the 2nd happiest city in the world. We were just given the title by the UN, and we're of course very proud of that. And that I'll come back to when we talk about our new strategy. But the 2nd city, the second happiest city in the world by the UN, Helsinki was #1. I can't understand why. Now Terry says it should be either Belfast or Ljubljana or Aarhus, of course. But Aarhus is 2nd, and we're pretty proud of that. Now I think I'm just going to show you a short film of almost 2 minutes about the Aarhus region. And just to give you an impression of what it looks like here, I'm sitting right now at the top of the library that Terry mentioned at Dock 1 in the middle of the city, overlooking the city from where I am now. But let's just see the film, then you can see some impressions of what Aarhus is like for those of you who have not yet been to visit us.
Meet me in a place where fresh water meets salt water. A place with more than 1,000 years of history, where the old meets the new. A place where we can revel in music, art, and innovation, and feel the pulse of city life. A place where we can escape. Meet me in the rainbow above the city. A place where the days are shaped by youthful thinkers, standing on the pillars of history. A place where things come to life. Where everyone can see the past, present, and future all in one day. Meet me in the center of the old Viking Empire, in a European capital of culture. A place where the happiest people alive believe that quality of life stems from pleasure, contemplation, and community. Meet me in a cave of wonders, at the highest mountains, on the longest river, where cozy cities meet the wide open countryside, where it all comes together. Meet me where the locals meet the world, and where everything is within reach. Meet me in the Aarhus region.
Yep, that was basically it. Now you have an impression of what the Aarhus region looks like and what it covers. We are a destination that is has strong offers with culture, with nature, and different kinds of experiences. And as we said in the film, we were the European capital of culture, so that means a lot. The picture you see now is one of our volunteers. The nice young lady is standing there just welcoming some of our guests in the city. And that's something that I'm going to elaborate on a little bit about now, because a great place to live is a great place to visit. That is the title of our brand new strategy. We just launched it last week, and I was a bit nervous about how it was going to be received, because it's quite different from what we used to have as a strategy, and it also raises the bar and the ambition level quite a bit. A great place to live is a great place to visit. Those two are mutually dependent. If it's a great place to live, then it will be a great place to visit, and vice versa. If it's a great place to visit, it will generate a more interesting place to live, because it generates value in many ways. It creates a culture, institutions, restaurants, more shops. It creates jobs, all kinds of value it creates. So that's the title, and that's what we've chosen that, and it's not even translatable in Danish. It's just the English title. When we look at this strategy we just launched, it is both a recovery strategy and it is a long-term strategy. Many of you are probably just thinking recovery right here, and how do we move on from here? How do we get out of this terrible period of Corona that we've been in? And how do we look on the long term? How do we develop? How do we innovate on the long term? And that is also what the Danish partners that we have. We have over 450 Danish tourism businesses as partners in Visit Aarhus. That's what they're thinking. And also we have 40 employees in Visit Aarhus. That's what they're dealing with every day. And that's what we try to address in this new strategy. What we have in this strategy is that it's basically a sustainable strategy. It's based on the social, the environmental, and the economic sustainable ways of thinking. So it's got 3 chapters in it. And if we just switch to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about that. The 3 chapters, or the 3 tracks, are balanced growth, it's local pride and community, which rhymes beautifully with loving local, as you said the title was today, and then the greener tourism. All of these have been developed out of a sustainable way of thinking. And I have to excuse my Danish. I don't speak English as often as I used to, because you don't travel as much as you used to, and you don't engage in the activities and networks that you usually do. So when I lack words, I'm sorry. I hope you can bear with me. What we're trying to do is improve tourism in balance with nature and culture, and also the citizens that live here. The balanced growth is actually the more traditional way of tourism development, where we talk jobs, we talk growth, we talk turnover, and all these things, how we're going to deal with that. But the local pride and the greener tourism are new ways of looking at things for us in Aarhus. And the local pride and community is, it's like the foundation of what we stand on. We have in Aarhus quite a unique volunteer program. We have 2,100 locals who are in our voluntary program. It was built up during our European Capital Culture Year in 2017, and Visit Aarhus did inherit that program and has developed it on throughout the years it's been since that. And it's actually growing, where many people have got problems, engaging locals as volunteers and also making them stay as volunteers. We are actually seeing an increase, even during Corona times, in our voluntary program. And what they do is they help whenever we have events in the city, big conferences. They greet the guests when they're coming from the cruise ships, when they used to come. And then they're also in the streets greeting our guests, both the Danes, the national guests, and the international guests. So we use them in a whole variety of ways. And they are proud locals, and they are also very important in, the way you think about tourism in Aarhus. We don't have hostility against our guests. We don't have problems with over-tourism, but we have a lot of locals who are proud to be hosts and who are very good at recommending our city and our whole destination to their neighbors, their friends, their co-workers, and so on. So they play a very big role. And this strategy, we're trying to build from that. We're trying to expand this volunteer program to, first of all, the whole of our new destination, and then to the whole of Denmark. We've got a lot of visitors coming, both from abroad, but also from Denmark, who would like to know what we're doing. And it is actually about community. It's about friendship. It's about making them as part of our tourism effort, making them engage in the tourism that we have in the city and in the whole region. That is, well, that's basically what it's all about. And you can see some of the things in the pictures that you see on the left that we've joined in. This middle part is a parade we make every year in December around Christmas, where all the locals, the volunteers, they participate in this and walk in a huge parade through the city and participate in that. And then we have actually the bottom picture is Dock 1, where I'm placed the library in the middle of the city, which is quite beautifully in architecture. They're also placed here to greet the guests when they're coming. So that's the local pride and community. And that is, it's another way of thinking the value that we create where we use them more actively. We also use the locals very actively in this new strategy in our marketing, in our communication. Our new campaign is called The Best Guide is Local, because they are the best hosts. So we're using the pictures of them, the recommendations from the locals and so on in our marketing. And then also in our guest service, in our hospitality part, we have closed the traditional tourist information spots, and we are now using the locals as hosts. And then we're also present with the guides where the guests are, not in particular places every time, but placed out in the region where it makes sense. So if it's a beautiful sunny day, we'll be at the beach. If it's not, which is usually not in Denmark, we will be at the museum, or we will be here, or we will be somewhere else. So that's also, you know, a thing that's gone through with our guests and hospitality part. And then there is the greener tourism, which is also a big part of our new strategy and of the way we think long term. That has to, you know, be the foundation of everything we do. All new projects we take in, all new activities, we have to think sustainability in that from the beginning. And that's also a new part. And I think basically our role as a DMO is to make the greener choices easy for our guests, but also for the businesses, inspiring the businesses to move in a greener direction in a way that is, well, it's manageable. It's you can do this, be an inspiration, and also begin a movement, because we're not world champions in this, not yet anyway. But we're trying to move things in a more green direction when it comes to both the guests, when it comes to the businesses, when it comes to the things we do. We've just been a green tourism organization, which is a title, which is a certification. We've just been awarded that in Denmark, and we're trying to expand that to our partnerships and our networks where we are. Let me just see what I need to say. Yeah, well, it's important to say that the 3 tracks that we have here are mutually dependent tracks. One cannot work without the other. And when we presented this has been made with our partners, of course, and with the municipalities, with input from them, with the dialogue with them, and also with our volunteers. But when we presented that, of course, this represents a change in the way that we create results, in the way that we think tourism, and also in the way that we in our DMO has to use our strength and our efforts. This has got a whole line of, you know, activities after that, after each of these tracks. But that is basically what we're trying to do, and the leap that we're taking into a very uncertain future. I hope it makes sense from your perspective. I've not written, I've not been able to write or read the strategy from Belfast, but I'll do that after our session today, and maybe I'll also have a chance to have a dialogue about it. I hope it sort of rings a bell to some of the things that you're experiencing and doing in Belfast. And the last slide is actually just to say thank you for your attention, and I think that was the things that I had in mind when we start off, and then I'll be very much looking forward to hearing what Petra has to say.
Yeah, thank you so much, and very enlightening about the role of volunteers and the journey you're on, and it is a journey. And I'm going to make that green link, you know, the search for the green destination with Ljubljana, because you were the European capital, green capital, in 2017?
16.
16.
Yes.
So Petra, thank you for joining us, and congratulations. I hope it's congratulations anyhow, taking on the mantle of President of European Cities Marketing for another year after an extremely difficult year.
Yeah.
So please tell us about Ljubljana tourism, about Ljubljana. I love one of the things which you've always said is we got to think about questions like, what does the culture taste like? You know, great questions that get us to think differently. So over to you, Petra, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's such an honor, and I'm really, really happy to be actually again with you, because I had the pleasure to share some of our initiatives with you quite a few years ago. But I'm really, really happy to share with you what we are doing together with locals now. And it was really interesting for me to hear, Pia, what you guys were doing with new strategy, because we, actually quite a nice coincidence, adopted our brand new strategy also last year. But actually we had quite a interesting dilemma whether we should change everything, because we've done it in 2019 and it was finished by the end of 2019. And we were then asking ourselves, what do we do now? Because, you know, we came in front of like completely new situation in 2020. So we paused for a while. We were thinking about how to proceed for let's say approximately half of a year. And then we decided, you know what? We are going to think mid and long term. We are going to stay optimistic, because that's how we live by, not only operate by. And we know that people used to travel in the past. We wanted to travel during the COVID times, and we will travel also in the future. So bottom line, we did not change much, and we are happy about it. But let me share with you what are we doing locally. I will, you know, we know already for a, we know already that the key, of course, is a key to success of every DMO. Each DMO is different, but each DMO basically has a key to success, which is a clever adaptation of our own situation. And of course, the cooperation, that's the key one, the cooperation among all stakeholders. So how did we do that? I will touch a little bit of culture, a little bit of the gastronomy. I will also touch the building of city quarters DNAs. But most of all, how did we all do this in relation to locals or together with locals? Because that is for us the key. Whoever actually visited Ljubljana so far will tell you that you don't need a big city to tell a might and great stories. And Ljubljana is a feel-good city for basically everyone. We are very built in a sustainable way. We're open for all. That means a lot to us. So to be open for everyone. We're, of course, honoring our cultural heritage. We're really proud serving our locally grown food. And, of course, keeping people happy, safe, and well. We were always attentive to local community, because we were always monitoring attitude towards tourism development already in the previous times, because we basically strongly believe that only happy locals, they can basically transmit positive energy to visitors, or they are the best ambassadors to the destination. We really, really strongly believe that it's not only a line. And what we've seen from the monitoring the attitude towards tourism, we've seen that the most of Ljubljana people think or believe that tourism has positive effects on development and identity of Ljubljana. That was before, and that is even now. I'll tell you later on why are we talking about now. Ljubljana is a city very rich in events, because we host more than 13 events every year. 13,000 events every year, which is really impressive for the city of our size, of approximately 300,000 inhabitants. And a lot of them are happening on the streets free of charge. So they're building rich, cozy, friendly atmosphere for locals and for foreigners. But where's the catch? The catch is that we as Ljubljana Tourism, with DMO, we co-finance 48 projects and more than 1,000 events per year. But the key is that they drive from or are based in our local heritage. So for us, is the key that local loves local events with, and they learn about our past, or they co-create with us the future through these events. Following our long-term strategic goals, also we want to spread the tourism flows away from the city center. Ljubljana is a very central city with a very distinctive city center. So we need to drive people out, or we want to drive people also out of the city, center. So we started a project which is supporting and developing a new cultural neighborhoods in other parts of the city, in 4 other parts around Ljubljana center. Which are completely, which are the quarters with completely different DNA. And we are actually building these quarters, cultural quarters, together with the locals, the ones who are working there, either in NGOs or in other cultural institutions, and the ones who live there, because we don't want to bring people to their, in vicinity of their homes, and then get them annoyed with the, with the some things that they wouldn't like to take place there, or too many people. So they need to be, they need to agree with that development. So we are asking them to develop it with us, and we've done so far successfully one quarter like that, and we have 3 more to go. But also currently in the work is the larger exhibition place in Slovenia, Gallery Cukrarna. For us is of greatest importance that this used to be this used to be a factory for sugar, making sugar. And we turned this old factory, which was completely useless, and took place into a really beautiful spot where the exhibitions and events are taking place. But the most important thing, we are asking or encouraging local cultural organizations, the NGOs, the local businesses to collaborate here permanently and present themselves and their work in these premises. And the pettiness and boutiqueness of our country allows us to have extremely fresh local ingredients on our daily menu. And for us, gastronomy is also a strong part of culture. We already started some years ago the project called Green Supply Chains, and we wanted hotels to offer, the hotels and restaurants and bars to offer really or to purchase 100% locally produced foods via a uniquely managed and simple use platform. And through that, we are able to support local food producers. They can meet among themselves. They can meet with chefs of the restaurants, with owners of the restaurants. We reduce CO2 emission, obviously, by eliminating long transport. And until today, 18 tons of local food has been purchased by Ljubljana hotels and restaurants through this green sustainable chain platform. And we're really proud of that, because it's not usually that the tourism organization starts that together with other entities in Ljubljana municipality, but it is an extremely successful project, which is now spread it also to local schools and to local kindergartens. We also, are teaching them or trying to preserve the knowledge of the local crafts and how to do this in a traditional way. This lady here is really old, but actually she's passing her knowledge on to really, youngsters, the kids. And we use that also as a tourism offer. And several sightseeing activities like, points of interest, they incorporate presentation of local history and culture through very interactive tours. This is actually a part of the tour. And they are also interesting for domestic people. So it's interesting for them to see or even to participate that. One such as an example is, for example, a mustache tour, basically the most awarded tour in Europe, which gives insight into the lives of 3 figures: the greatest Slovenian architect, the greatest Slovenian painter, and the greatest Slovenian writer. who would know or have interest in those three of such a, you know, community, such a small community in their culture. But if you you know, if you put it in a story and present it in a really interesting way, then everyone is interesting. During the COVID times, we of course were not able to meet. We were, you know, suddenly cut from our rich cultural, not only events, but happenings. So of course, like in many other destinations, we put culture also on the web. We made institutions to open their archives, to make them, to allow free viewing of documentaries, to support artists through art in installation, puppet theater, put some plays online, all different activities were happening through our web. But not only that, we decided to, like Terry mentioned in the beginning, we decided to combine culture and our gastronomy through a project called Cool Moment. Cool means like you hear it in English in our language as well, like cool. And we were actually combining the stories that connect culture and cuisine. We encourage people, especially locals, to visit our cultural institutions and to find out the story that lies behind the local culinary highlight in connection to the culture. And now the lockdown, fortunately, is finishing, but we're still continuing that, and people are more and more interesting. Ljubljana tourism, of course, we are also aware of the importance of preserving the cultural heritage in general, but as well as the importance of preserving it to domestic and foreign visitors, especially the culture that is either not visible or not accessible for several reasons, not to be damaged. So now we are working on digitalization of Pličnik's cultural heritage, and our greatest architect, Jože Pličnik, he was the pioneer of the 20th century modern architecture, and he had a large-scale effect on Ljubljana, similar, like, let's say, Antonio Gaudí to Barcelona. And we are digitalizing his works that are most difficult accessible. So we are preserving our local heritage, but not only that, we are showing to our locals that what were the dreams of our greatest architect, because these two projects that I just showed you, these will never be realized, because Pličnik was dreaming about it, but unfortunately did not realize them. So it's interesting for locals to see what else he was dreaming about, because what he actually did was already monumental. And out of this, we're developing also a boutique 5-star experience with all of Pličnik's works, those that visitors can see in the center of Ljubljana, but also outside of center of Ljubljana, that are accessible only virtually. But the fun fact of this virtual presence is that you can actually make your own party in there, or your own business event in there. This is what we are enabling for locals and for foreigners to do with the works of our greatest architect. And of course, like you, in both of your destinations, in Aarhus and of course in Belfast, our experiences, we love to move around. We love the nature that is basically in our cities and around us. And we Slovenians are really, really famous for the love of our sports. So this also applies to us in Ljubljana. So we as DMO are also constantly developing cycling and hiking trails, but now we are actually telling to the locals the sweet spots of Ljubljana that people didn't know so far, because they either went to other regions or were traveling abroad, but now this was not possible. We were limited to our region only. So we showed them how interesting our region really is through discovering the new spots within the region, or giving them the new stories of the spots that they already knew. So this is, we were really, really busy through the COVID times. And this is my end slide. You can get if you would like to have more, and we won't be able to touch now when we will be a little bit talking more about it. These are my contacts, but we were really busy during the COVID times. And one thing that we can touch upon now, or maybe talk about it next time when we see each other, is the campaign that we just launched for Ljubljana people, not even for Slovenians, for Ljubljana people, how do we locals benefit from tourism, from tourists, from their money, from their presence here? Because we are telling people, you know, that if tourists will not come, not only the atmosphere will be gone, but also some very beloved infrastructural and other projects that are, or in events that are happening in Ljubljana. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Petra. I mean, I think interestingly that both of you are talking about stepping out as a DMO, stepping out of the traditional ways which have constrained or have led to the typical way of which a DMO was expected to perform. You're stepping out of tourism, embracing other things and bringing it into tourism and putting tourism into other aspects of city life and destination life. So thank you very much. Jerry, I think, are you going to rejoin us now and perhaps lead on some questions that I know have come in from your members?
Thank you, ladies, and Terry, thank you so much for those inspiring presentations, and I trust that we'll get a copy of them and we can circulate them across our members. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do have 3 or 4 questions, if I may. The first one, Terry, is probably more relevant to you, given your history and long connection with Belfast. In the 70s, over as a student, partying. In the 80s, visiting professor. In the 90s and the noughties, advising TNI in terms of strategic signature projects, and then in the 2015 right up to the present day advising on neighbourhood tourism initiatives. So the question has come in about how do Belfast's current neighbourhood tourism models compare to others that you've seen, given that you've been a consultant in over 50 destinations in countries around the world?
Well, the short answer is that they're absolutely up there and comparable with best practice. I mean, if one took a very simple model of what I regard as kind of 5 pillars of neighbourhood sustainability, so environmental, social, economic, but if you put into that territorial and governance, and so you have 5 pillars of neighbourhood tourism, then I think, you know, some of the work that's going on East Side and in West Belfast are comparable to the best practice in neighbourhood and community-based tourism development in urban areas. So you should be very proud. And I think, Jerry, there's a real opportunity to use those models to help you inform your new strategy and what could be happening in other neighbourhoods of Belfast. But at the same time, you know, taking note of what Petra's doing and Pia's doing in terms of, you know, adding dimensions to that neighbourhood recipe. And, you know, the involvement of local people and the involvement of volunteer ambassadors, you know, are certainly additional elements. So be proud, shout about it more, learn from internal best practice as well as the external best practice.
Good point, Terry. Sometimes, yeah, we profits are never accepted in their own land, and we have excellent examples that we can just replicate throughout the city region. Petra, Pia, we talked about sustainable tourism practices. How did you achieve the cultural shift necessary amongst your local industry to accept that these practices need to be embedded to ensure you to achieve your obviously very effective tourism models? Pia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I don't think we have had to convince a lot, because I think they were already on the path, and they were actually pushing us in some ways, because we've got some very very good local businesses who are very far ahead when it comes to sustainability, and who have reached and who've achieved a lot already by themselves. So I don't think we've had to push a lot, not when it comes to the big businesses anyway, but maybe the middle-sized and small businesses, our role is bigger, because we've had to inspire more and share best practices, and we've held numerous webinars and seminars about this, and we've also engaged them in a sustainable network that we're starting up now, because they need a little more inspiration. They don't have the manpower that the big businesses do to engage in this.
For us, is actually we established already quite a while ago that sustainability could be just a buzzword that nobody knows what to do with it, or you can actually make or create, to bring it to people closer to people through a storytelling. And this, of course, obviously we chose the second path, because the key was to get all the stakeholders, the businesses, the mid-size, even the big size and the small size businesses on board together around one table. That was the most challenged thing to do. So you really needed to create a clear vision first for yourself. Where do you want to end? What do you want to end up with? And then we started on a very professional level, but through that we created storytellings. Story, for example, how did we get all the chefs or owners of the restaurants on board for the Taste Ljubljana, or these locally grown, or to use the locally grown ingredients in local food, and along with that also promote it to the locals. Because you can, I mean, it's fairly easy to promote it to foreigners who are curious, but to locals, they think they know the best. And at the end, when you tell them that they don't really know everything, or that they don't know majority, and you tell them that in a really pleasant, maybe even humorous way, then it really works. Then everyone is on board. Everyone wants to participate in that. So that's where we basically start every project. Only the content itself is different, but the way is the same.
Okay, so Jerry, I think the other thing, Jerry, is that we've got to be really optimistic and positive about the next generation of entrepreneurs. You know, the young people who are taking over family businesses will just be doing sustainability as a matter of course. You know, it's not an optional. Yeah. It's what's expected, and they get it. Yeah. So I think, you know, it's almost, I think, Pierre, you used the term youthful thinking. Mm-hmm. I think we've got to let that generation Z and X really fly, because they'll just embrace every dimension of sustainability.
What I'll take from what Petra said there is I need to brush up on all my jokes and use humour more as we go through. For both of the ladies again, you referred constantly to citizen buy-in, and that clearly is a prerequisite going forward for successful destinations. And the campaign, Petra, that you referred to, and the volunteers, Pia, that you have used. But how do you champion local neighbourhood initiatives to a global audience? How do you present them to a global audience?
Pia, would you like to start?
You're welcome, Petra.
That's a really great question, and it's a really challenging one. I completely agree with that. Because, I mean, I know I come from the nation which consists only of 2 million inhabitants, and that's it. So if you're not interesting, it's not like self-explanatory that people would be interested in your or your cultural heritage, your city as such, let alone only part of it. So again, I mean, I sound like repeating myself, but again, it's about telling the actual story of the DNA of that particular part of town, and it works. And it needs to be not something generic, but something that people, when they go there, truly feel it, that people who live there really believe in. For example, I don't know, we have in one of these quarters that I was talking about before, we have a computer of, a museum of computers, which is not at all, how should I say, focused on future, but it's focused on the past. And all the NGOs around basically, not all, but a lot of them made their programs around the computers from when we started, and make the whole, then the cultural event came out of this, which was really funny for locals, so they went to see it. So, you know, you got to you got to establish the DNA of this particular part of town, and then it will be interesting to both locals and to foreigners. But of course, not in the same way. That's also what we've learned. You cannot just simply translate something that is interesting to locals to something that for foreigners, because it won't work. You have to simplify it for foreigners. You have to spice it up at sometimes, not lie, of course, not to be mistaken, but to emphasize some things that locals don't need to. Just make the two different ways, and it's going to work.
Yeah, well, I agree, Petra. And what we've done is to select some stories from the different neighborhoods and emphasize them. The farther you get away from the Aarhus region, the more simple it has to become, and the brighter the Aarhus brand shines and the weaker the neighborhood brand shines. But we've also discovered during this last year of the pandemic that, you know, we have to emphasize the neighborhoods also for the domestic tourists. They know already the different parts of the region and of Aarhus and so on. We cannot use much of the material we have on both the domestic and the international. So the farther you get away, the more you have to select stories about this neighborhood that fits your story, that fits your communication, that fits your brand. Mm-hmm. And also what we've discovered, of course, as you probably have, is that the domestic tourists, the locals are actually very important customers. Also in discovering their own destination. We've had, we made some efforts and made a map, an interactive map where the locals pitched in with their best ideas of where to go. And when I have visits, I take them here. And we got a lot of, you know, insight from that at Visit Aarhus. We thought we were the experts, but we were definitely not. So what we discovered is that the locals used the stories and the ideas, and that was, you know, in Danish you would say, aha, experience.
And in my opinion, also, Pia just reminded me, in our opinion, I mean, the COVID times are really they're difficult for every one of us. We just want them to be finished, all of us. But it's also a great opportunity to step out of the comfort zone, to adopt new patterns, because the locals, they're not only the best ambassadors, they're also the worst critics and the most difficult to please. So it's a great learning period on how to develop new things and how to think differently. Because if you will please the locals, then the tourists will definitely be happy.
Okay. Yeah. Guys, we have 1 minute, 30 seconds. Terry, very quickly, last question, if I may, to you. 30 seconds, because I need to wrap up and thank everyone. Your insight into the role that minority language community could play in contributing to community regeneration. I know you're a massive fan of the Welsh language, for example.
I think the answer there is don't see it as a minority language. You know, it's a language that local people use, and it's another aspect of the DNA. It's perhaps the most critical aspect of the DNA. So you've got to nurture it, you let it flourish, you let it be your storytelling. For people who don't understand it, you use it as a gateway to help people to understand that. Jerry, it's just part of the DNA and it's part of the identity. And both our speakers have talked about identity being driven by neighborhood and neighborhood DNA. So it's not that little thing that's sat over here that you might inject at a particular time. It's absolutely fundamental in a neighborhood or as part of the DNA of a city. And I'd leave you with this last thought. Both of our wonderful speakers this afternoon have really just emphasized what Marshall McLuhan was saying years ago, is media is not the message, the story. It's all about the story. Mm-hmm. And the media you use, be it a moustache tour or be it cool on the internet, is simply a means of opening people's minds to what the real DNA is about in a place.
We're going to have to wrap it up there. We could talk all day. Just to say, ladies, I don't think Denmark and Slovenia are on the green list yet, but if they do, the minute they do, you have an open invitation to come over to Belfast. And Terry, you're always welcome, and we'll continue this conversation in person, okay? Thank you so much. A couple of things, if I could. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. The importance of neighbourhood, the importance of community, that is clearly coming through. That's something that we really have to champion, and we in Visit Belfast are committed to that. It's embedded in the Belfast agenda, led by Belfast City Council. We will. The importance of collaboration. Thank you to Belfast City Council, TNI, Diageo, TransLink, all our partners, Value Cabs, all of us, the 400, 500 members of working together. That's the way how we're going to get out of it. And the other thing that I've taken from this is that tourism isn't the goal in itself. We have a higher goal, and I like the idea that what we're about is building a better place to live. And when we're building a better place to live, certainly people will want to come and visit. So ladies, Terry, Professor Stevens, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you back in Belfast in real time. See you later. Thank you, everyone. Bye.